Hello, we are here today to talk to everyone about the upcoming holiday, which is Thanksgiving. My name is Jordan Langford Forster. My Aani name is Bright Trail Woman.
I'm Miranda Murray, and we are the lead facilitators for Bright Trail Education.
We kind of just wanted to have a conversation today concerning Thanksgiving because there's a lot going on in our country as far as fighting, arguing, keep going with Thanksgiving, canceling Thanksgiving, yada, yada, yada. So we just wanted to offer a different perspective on Thanksgiving, and it's probably not going to be what you expect.
So, what we've come to know about the story of Thanksgiving, the things that we grew up understanding when we were younger, is this idea of the pilgrims settling on the coast, on the east coast of what is now the United States, and inviting the Native American people to join them and being brave in inviting them to enjoy a feast of celebration of a harvest.
It's also really important to acknowledge that when we think about the colonists, we think about the settlers and them coming over to a world that was new to them. There's this connotation that civilization wasn't already here, it wasn't already happening. And it's really important to acknowledge that all of the First Nations people, all of the Indigenous people of what would become the United States had all of the aspects of civilization already amongst them. They had a social hierarchy, they had a government, they had an education system, they had language systems, they had scientific systems of irrigation and working the land. They had doctors, they had an economy, they had all of these things already in place. But I think a lot of times people think that civilization didn't happen until the colonists arrived.
So the people we've come to know as the Pilgrims, which that's not really what they called themselves separatists, in about 1620, made financial gain to be able to charter a voyage to the New World. And they left from Holland, a place that they had been living to escape religious persecution for many years, and felt that they needed a place of their own, that they were unsuccessful in Holland as they were living.
Yeah, which is contrary to what we have historically learned in school, landing on Plymouth Rock, that doesn't exist. So they make their way over here in 1620, and essentially what had happened is they encountered a village that had previously the population had been decimated due to disease, and so it was a vacant area of land. It doesn't mean that tribal people were not in the area and hadn't been using the land and developing it. There just weren't people there at that time. What they discovered when they came upon this village is that the indigenous people of that area buried things with their dead. So what the separatists began to do was dig up the graves because they realized that there was goods buried with these bodies. They also realized that the indigenous population stored their food underground, kind of like a refrigerator. They were storing their food underground, so they started stealing from them. They started stealing seeds to start planting on their own so they would be able to survive. Essentially, what happened after that is the local tribe in the area got sick of them grave robbing, and they got sick of them stealing their food supply, that they had several ambassadors help teach the separatists how to farm for themselves, how to cultivate the land so they could live successfully on their own without having to steal from the local natives.
Yeah, the Wampanoag people were really integral in the survival of the separatists upon their arrival. They arrived just a couple of months before winter, and without having found those food stores, would have not survived because they didn't bring enough food with them or supplies with them once they reached land. So in March of 1621, the Wampanoag people and the separatists decided to have some diplomacy and create an agreement that would help mutually benefit each other in their survival. Both groups understood that their numbers were small due to disease and other circumstances, and this agreement helped them to help each other in the event that they were attacked by outside entities.
political alliances were very common back then. I know that sometimes we think that like the colonists came over and everyone just started fighting, but political alliances were very common because it's kind of like the old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so there was a lot to gain from having these political alliances as far as safety, and also, it was very common for them to go hunting with each other, political alliances like that. So it's not that they were best friends, but it was really mutually beneficial for them in terms of survival at that time.
So later on in the year, the settlers had set out for a day of hunting, and their gunshot attracted the attention of the Wampanoag people. And upon coming together, they realized that the settlers were going to have a celebration of their harvest and the bounty that they had collected up until this time. And so the Wampanoag people set out and hunted and provided deer for this feast and gathered with the settlers for 3 days to celebrate, play games, and interact with each other to celebrate this harvest and to give thanks for the supplies and the feasts that they were able to have.
My favorite part of the story, personally, is that it wasn't just a day, it lasted 3 days. They ate for 3 days. Anyway.
And there was a lot of food that was involved, none of them really being turkey, but a lot of the local crops, corn, there's plentiful fish in that area, and of course deer, as we mentioned earlier. So the term Thanksgiving comes from the European idea of special days of thanks that happen on special occasions for many different reasons. The feast that we've talked about so far was never called a Thanksgiving. They didn't give it that name. But the next Thanksgiving officially was to celebrate the massacre of the Pequot people about 16 years later.
Yeah, and then it wasn't until the Civil War that actually Thanksgiving became a national holiday. And that's when Lincoln declared, he actually declared 2 Thanksgivings. He declared one Thanksgiving in August, and then he declared another one in November. And I think that was really him establishing the idea of the country coming together after the Civil War. So the idea behind it was well-intentioned because the country was just ravished with this genuinely huge loss of American people.
So the purpose of this video is to offer you a different perspective on some of the history you might have heard over your life. And it's really important to us to establish with our students and with the people we work with to seek out different perspectives on their understanding of the world around them.
We understand that there's this continuing conversation in our country of whether to continue Thanksgiving or to cancel Thanksgiving. And we're not providing you this information to say that we want to cancel Thanksgiving, because it's really important to acknowledge that Indigenous people have been practicing the idea of gratitude and reciprocity since time immemorial. It was very common for them to get together after a successful harvest or a successful hunt and share their bounties with their neighbors. And so actually the practice of Thanksgiving is Indigenous. And so we want to encourage people to just be more intentional about how you share your information, especially with students. It's really important for them to get a more accurate historical content. But the idea of Thanksgiving is very valuable, and it has been practiced, like I said, since time immemorial for Indigenous people. And the idea of being grateful is something that has always been a piece of my culture, and acknowledging everything that the land has to offer, and sharing with others, sharing your bounty with others. And so I don't think that it's wrong to get together with your friends and family and have a nice meal and share what you're grateful for, because that practice in and of itself is an Indigenous practice, and it's very important.
Yeah, we want to encourage families, teachers, and students to talk about this time of year. It's an important part of the conversation, but to reach beyond just this time of year and to instill that gratefulness and thankfulness practice throughout your life in all aspects, and really providing yourself and your family the opportunity to talk about the things you have and to be grateful for the things you have.
Absolutely. Gratitude shouldn't be compartmentalized to one day a year. Uh, it would be great if we could do that all of the time and treat each other the way we treat each other around the holidays all of the time. And I personally don't see anything wrong with people getting together often and eating a lot of food.
Always a good time.
I think that's great. I think we need more of that. Excellent. So, anyway, thank you for joining us. We just wanted to again offer you a different perspective on Thanksgiving, but also encourage you to continue those practices, continue reciprocity, continue these feelings of gratitude, because it really is important. And I think it's really important in a time like now for us to acknowledge the things that we have and be grateful for the people that we have in our lives.
Yeah, we hope that you stay safe and well and enjoy time with the people you're able to spend the time with. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah.